So when I first started cutting objects, one of the first things I realized was that the thickness of the material would matter. Like in a 3D object like this coffin, um, one of the things you notice is that the the sides cut through these little edges into the bottom and top, and so the thickness of this particular hole, the height of it, is important because um, if you have a pattern that's made for 5 millimeters and you cut it out of 3 millimeters, there's going to be a lot of slack in the hole. Let me show you an example. This is 1/4 inch plywood that you can get at Home Depot or your home center if you live out of the country. It's a pretty standard thickness of 5 millimeters, which is 1/4 inch, roughly. They're not going to translate directly. And how I measure that is I have this super cheap caliper, and what you'll notice is on this side there's a 0, and that lines up with a ruler here. And so I'm measuring everything in millimeters just because that's how this machine was, that's how I learned. But you can also do the same thing with inches. I just don't. So you basically put this device like this, and you get it all tightened up. And if you'll see, that 0 falls right on the 5 millimeter line. And so I know for certain that this is a 5 millimeter board. That becomes important when you start talking about what power settings you're going to use on the laser and what speed settings you're going to use, because in order for this whole process to work, you've got to cut with a certain power on the laser, and you've got to cut with a certain speed. And if the speed's too fast, it won't cut all the way through. If the speed's too slow, you'll burn it. If the laser's too hot, you'll burn it. If the laser's not hot enough, you won't cut all the way through. So it's somewhat important that you do that. This material, this hardboard that I was telling you about, it's not it's not a 1/4 inch. It's on this one 3 millimeters, and so that makes a difference. If you had a pattern, this pattern can be adjusted. Let me show you on my screen. That's a terrible way to do it, I know, but this pattern can be adjusted. These holes right here can be made bigger or smaller by adjusting the whole package. I can let me just show you. See these handles on the corners? If you click on them, they will let you grow the whole package to a larger size. The grid marks are 10 millimeter grid marks, and so I can expand this. It's trickier than this. There's a little bit more to it than that, but basically I've just made the holes bigger because I made the spacing bigger. So that's really important for some kinds of patterns. Now other types of patterns, what's a good example? This. It's a terrifying Easter bunny. But let's say you wanted to print this. The size doesn't really matter because it's a 2D object, and everything that you print would just get larger if you grabbed the corner handle and pulled it larger. Everything that's associated with this, all the pieces of it, would just get bigger. I'll show you that, but yeah, it does have a extra pieces. The idea is to make a 3D effect. But if you pulled the corner of this on screen, every piece of this would get bigger, and so this is parametric. It doesn't matter the size. So So some patterns that are 2D don't matter because you're not going to try to piece them together, and some pieces are 3D, and the holes that you're cutting in one piece are intending to get or receive a piece of a certain thickness, and that's important. So I'm glad I wanted to point that out to you. So let me cue up a something that we're going to cut real quick. Here is the design that I'm going to choose. I've got a piece of 1/8 inch acrylic in the machine right now, and the blue line is going to cut all the way through, and the red line is going to etch at 25%. So let's plug something in. Alright, sorry for the extra noise, but here's where we find out if my noise cancellation works. Hipster has been chosen. I'm just going to hit enter on Hipster. It's going to put it into the position, and then of course there's a start button. Before we do that, I'm going to use the arrows to put it in the start spot. And that start spot will be down here. Somewhere in there. I want it on the page. You'll notice the sound went down because it's no longer blowing all the way through the grate. It's bouncing off the plastic sheet. Let's make sure we're in range here. Let's go a little low. I'm going to turn my knob here. Tiny bit more. Alright, we're going to call that good. You can't see it too well, but it's within a millimeter or so. Also, that doohickey is on with several keys. One of them, as I mentioned in the first video, is the key that makes everything go. Okay, so now that that's on, I have a separate fan for my blower. It's just going to Okay, so now we got positive air pressure. I've set everything correctly, and just do one last check. One last check that I guess I can show you is I always check to see the water flowing here in my bucket. Look how dirty it is. You can see, maybe you can't see, but I can see at the bottom of the intake that it's moving the water, so I know I'm off. Anyway. I know that it's moving. That's important because if the water's not moving across the inside the glass laser tube, you can burn up your stuff. So it's my final check, and then I'm just going to hit the start button and we'll fire this on. All right. Well, this is a process that's fraught with all kinds of. I'm going to hit escape real quick. What you're seeing is that after you line up the spot where you want it to be, there's an origin button here. Origin. And by pressing that, I'm telling it where to start. So you move it to where you want it to be, and then you push origin. Alright, now, final test. Next to the origin button is the frame button, and when I push that frame button, what it's going to do is it's going to track the area it's planning on cutting. Oh, it looks like I could probably save a little acrylic. Push the origin button, frame it. That looks like I've got all kinds of room. Origin button, frame. Alright, so I'm within ½ inch of the bottom of that, so I'm going to call it. Then the final step here is the start button, and then it just starts cutting out my shape. Well, there's really no good way to get at that shot. I can try. No, that's even worse. Basically, it's etching out the true hipster words, followed by a picture of a hipster. Let's see if I can get. I see hipster. It's drawing a man's head. Nope, nothing I'm going to be able to do. But as you can see with the print head, it's moving back and forth in micro measurements, taking out this image. Drawing a beard on a hipster, and this is the lower setting of etching. As you can see, it's going at a pretty reasonable rate. Let's see what we got here. And it's set for 95 millimeters. Excuse me, 5. Which started the cut. You probably can't tell, but it's definitely a more intense laser that's coming through this sort of darkened acrylic. So I generally don't look at the arc, probably from my experience as a welder. I understand that this plastic is supposed to keep me safe. I just don't believe it. Well, so right now it's going up and down in the tines of the comb. Let's go back to that image real quick. Just cutting these little doohickeys along the bottom there. And you'll notice this image is backwards. It has to do with the way that it comes out on the machine. And we're starting to get a picture. Anyway, it doesn't take too long to cut, just a couple minutes to get the bits and pieces out. And if you set the speed and power of your laser correctly, it just pops out. You can lift up the larger piece of plastic surrounding it, and it'll just come out. There's a layer of paper, sticky paper on both sides of this white acrylic. So the end game is it's going to be something that you have to peel and get out of all the nooks and crannies. And the last one, it is. Okay, it's looping around for that final step. One last touch on the words. That triple beat means that it's done. So let's peel up our lid. slightly indented, as in it's down. Oh no! What happened to his face? Looks like I have the cut setting wrong. No, the cut setting's right. I have the etch setting wrong. It looks like I've actually cut those letters out. Well, alright. Let's take a quick look. See what we can find. Cut settings. Ooh. Alright, so if I look at this image, black and red, red represents cut and cut. 97% power, 5mm speed, and the black, which is supposed to be etching. Alright, well that's the problem. The black etching, if I open that, this is supposed to be set for 25%. It's 25% power. And where's my speed? Speed currently set for 5mm. That's the speed for like an all the way through cut. I usually set it for 100 or 200, as it's just etching across the surface of the plastic, so that'll cut all the way through. I'm going to fire off a second cut. Let's do that. All right. So now that I've done that, I'm going to choose download. It'll ask me to name the document. I'll call it Hipster. I called the last one Hipster, so I'm going to duplicate the file, and now I have a download file success. Here I come. Let's see, file, Hipster, and I can see my settings there. Red is 5mm a second, black is 100mm a second. I'll come over here, get that out of the way, put this back into position, origin, frame, now try frame. Good. I'll see you in a minute. All my double checks. Now we're just gonna fire it away. You should be able to see it going faster now. It's writing up all those letters. True Hipsta is what it's writing, but you can see how much faster it's doing it at 100mm a second. It doesn't take very long for it to draw out those letters, and now it's starting on the man's head, but it's ripping through it pretty fast, and that should have been my first sign that it took the slowness on both times. But you sort of, oh man, this is a dirty cover. You could sort of see a man's head there in the shadow, and now it's going slow again, so that must be starting the cut. Either way, after you get all your measurements out and everything's set up, the waste is minimal because you've worked out all the tweaks for that. But during the process and your first time, the likelihood that you'll waste some material is pretty high. I'm going to skip ahead to the end. Okay, the end. the magic of modern storytelling. Just going to touch up a few things there in the face. There's my triple beat. Turn off my sound. All my noise. Take another look at this. Okay, so like I mentioned, the thing has plastic on it, so if you peel away at this, which is pretty hard to do with one hand, you'll slowly peel back the paper and reveal the image. So, as you can see, a true hipster. Give me just a second. Let me clean this up.